Everyone, this lesson is called How to Put in a Listing Agreement. So we are going to assume you've already watched my video how to start an app file. And then with this one, now once your app file started, if you look on my right-hand side, see how nice and pretty it is. I left out some information though, because I wanted to show you where to get it from. So when you do a listing, the very first thing that I do is I actually try to pull up the old listing. And this actually happens to be one of my listings right here. So I wanted to use that as your example. So over down, if you follow along, it asks for the property legal description. Never copy the legal description off of the old listing. What I would do is pull up the old listing, then go over here to IMAP, because this is the most accurate, and you never know what happens with another agent or what happens with their information. So you're never, like I said, you're never quite sure how accurate it is, and you want to be accurate, especially this example that I'm giving you is vacant land. So you will always find your legal description, and you see how difficult this is. It's pretty big. Some of them are really short, but I don't want to make a mistake. So what I do is I copy, and then I'll paste it right here where it says legal description. And there's no way I would have written this down or copied it word for word. The tax ID is the PID number, and you will always find that at the top. So you're going to copy and paste that as well. It's a little tricky sometimes to highlight. Just do your best. And I'm going to paste. And then that's where I get that last bit of information. So I have now filled out in my app file as much information as I can so far regarding this listing. So I'm going to click on Add Forms, and I'm pretending that this is a single family home with the homeowners association. So what I'm going to do is type in here is listing agreement, and we're always transaction brokers, okay? Really, our brokerage, I don't even think we allow single agents. They may, but just go with the transaction broker. That means you represent the transaction, okay, and not necessarily have a fiduciary responsibility to the buyer or the seller. And in my case, that's a good thing because I always say something I'm not supposed to. So that will prevent you from getting in trouble. The next thing that you would need definitely is the seller's disclosure. You want your sellers to definitely fill that out, and you want to do fillable. I'm going to show you how they're able to do that. And then you need the H. So we're going to assume that this is an HOA. So it's the FAR bar, Addendum B, Homeowners Association. And then always, what do we need? EXP wiring fraud notice. Okay, and then you're click on that, add selected forms. Voila. So here's the fun part. If you filled out the right-hand side correctly, and again, you're filling out the right-hand side because if you are not able to be here or do something, if you go on vacation, or your transaction coordinator, your title company, your lender has access to your app file, they need to get all of the information that's in there. So you click on the yellow import value, you do fields. This is form. I don't have a form, and I'm not really ready to import everything from the MLS, so I'm going to do fields. And as you can see, the master seller template has 10 values, file information has 3. And you bring it over. Okay, so it's our famous Jane and John Doe, and look at this. All of that stuff has been filled out. The price, it's a lot of the stuff gets to be filled out for you when you do this. So it's always a good idea to do that. So today's date is the 18th. And you do 6 months, so February, March, April, May, June, July, August. So we're already in August, and you do the day before because it ends at midnight, so it's the 17th. Okay, and then here's the street. Here's the legal description. Now, personal property, including appliances. This is where you put washer and dryer, microwave, refrigerator, oven, stove, and let's say, I don't know, what else? Did I put dishwasher? No, dishwasher. Now, if you have more appliances that are included, you definitely want to include that. This, let's just say this one is not occupied by a tenant. We're going to list it for $630. We'll take cash, conventional, VA and FHA. Now, VA and FHA have their term limits. People can put in their money on top of that. We'll go over that also at another time. But for argument's sake, we'll put all of these different ways of financing. Seller's not financing. They're not going to assume a mortgage. Okay, line 37. Seller will pay a mortgage discount. Just put 0 here. They're not going to pay anything for the buyer on the outset. Everything can be negotiated, but we don't want to scare the seller when we go into this and tell them, by the way, you're going to have to pay the buyer's part of the buyer's closing costs. Hopefully they don't have to do that at all. My customers do not want to opt out of anything. This does not need to be initial, okay, because we're not opting out of anything. We use a lockbox, but we show all of our own properties here in the Reach Estate team with the XP. So I always check use a lockbox, and you only give that combination to other agents, of course, not, I call them plain people without licenses. We're not withholding any offers. The seller, we don't do any of that. Now, I don't think in Loxahatchee they're building railroad tracks across here. So I put NA. This is, the seller doesn't know of any material facts, building code violations, or unobservable defects or anything that affects the property. Most important part, this part is the gross. Hopefully you were able to get 6% commission total, 50% of an option, and I always put 1 month's lease, 1 month's, rent. Let's go over this. 6% means 3% to you and 3% to a buyer that's represented by another agent. Now, what is a lease option over here, and why do you even bother filling that in? Every one of your sellers is going to say, I don't want to lease my property, and I'm definitely not going to rent my property. I'm not doing a rent to lease to own. That's what an option is, and I'm not renting it out. Well, guess what? They will in certain instances. I had one where we were 4 months into the deal. He was overpriced, and he wanted to stick to that price, and I let him. But then in month 4, someone came willing to pay his price, but they had to sell their property first. So we thought outside the box. They did a lease option. They gave him a down payment of $25,000, which went towards the principal. The $3,500 a month rent did not go towards the principal. So that was the incentive for the buyer to hurry up, sell their house, and get the money they needed to buy our listing. And then they did it for 2 months. And at the end, they owed the balance, and they actually paid cash for it. And here's the cool thing. This 1 month's rent commission and this here option covered everything. I did not have to renegotiate with the seller to get my commission. In this case, I got half of the option money. And then when we closed on the sale, I got the other half of my commission that was due, and I didn't have to renegotiate. So this is why I want you to fill this stuff out and explain to the seller that this is a contract made by the Florida Association of Realtors, made by attorneys, and you're not allowed to leave anything blank. That's fantastic that they're never going to do a lease option and they're never going to rent it out, but just for, to satisfy the broker and the state, you just have to fill it out. Right over here on line 122. So you bring Sally Sue to see the house. Now it could be from your advertising, so another agent brings the buyer. It doesn't matter. If they sell it to somebody that came to view the property or recognize the property because you had it on the MLS, if the seller suddenly says to you, hey, just want to terminate the listing with you, that's totally fine. But if they sell it to Sally Sue, guess what? You get a commission. And there's ways of following up with that and making sure you do. And it has been done, and realtors have been compensated. So we definitely want to keep an eye on that. So if anyone comes 180 days after the termination of this contract that we brought or due to our advertising, we get paid. Retain deposits. Never leave anything blank. You know how it says 50% if left blank? Buyers, people, buyers, sellers, nobody reads these in full. I always go over the highlights. You are a guide. You're not a lawyer. You're not an accountant. You're not anything. You are the middle person, and you are to really make sure that they read the contract. So I'll read and point out the highlighted parts, the part that I know that would be important to a seller in this case. So when you get money in escrow and the deal falls through for many reasons, and if the seller is indeed entitled to keep the deposit, they have to share it with you. So the seller's going to say, well, why do I have to share it with you? And you say, because I have to get the buyer's agent to get the buyer to sign away their deposit. Now, nobody's going to do that. I've gotten 2 in 20 years. And the agent, one of them, the first one, she despised her buyers, was mad at them because they walked away, and she made them sign. And let's just say it's a $5,000 deposit. The seller gets $2,500, and then you and the other agent split the other $2,500, and it has to go to EXP, and they take your percentages out, et cetera, et cetera. This will also help you retain the seller, because if you are able to actually keep a deposit, okay, I mean, imagine if it was 10, 20,000. If you're able to keep that, they're going to keep you as a listing agent, no matter what happens in that case of why the deal fell through. Now, a common mistake is people put 3% or 2.5% up here and don't know what to do down here. So I want you to pay attention. Here's where you divide everything up. Line 133, we are willing to offer 3%. I'm just going to be optimistic that we got 6% commission. So we're offering 3% to a single agent, if that company allows them to do that, 3% of the purchase price to a transaction broker. And guess what, guys? I don't even know what this means, because who would bring someone they're not even represented by? But you don't have to compensate an agent that does not represent the buyer. And the only way that can be proven is the buyer's agent has to furnish you with a paper saying that they don't represent the buyer. Never heard of this before in my life. Those are the rules, but put 0 there. Don't put 1%, 2%, any funny numbers. Put 0. If they don't represent the buyer, you're not going to pay them. Line 144. This all depends on the price of the listing, I would say. I have never charged anyone a cancellation fee, and most of the time I end up spending $500 on the transaction, on the listing. Let's say it's 500,000 and under. But if you're up there with 800,000 or 6, 7, 8, 9, $1 million, and you are actually spending quite a bit. I just saw one of the agents do a listing on a jet ski. He paid a lot of money for that. So if the seller backs out, they're going to have to pay, a certain fee. But what I always say to them is, look, if you don't like me anymore, or usually it's because they change their mind, or God forbid something happens in their life, they really don't want to sell the house anymore. They just terminate the agreement. I let them walk away. And that also helps them to sign a 6-month listing agreement with me, because other people say, oh, I only want to sign a 2-month. So I explained to them that I'm going to put all my time and effort and money into you. I'm going to trust you. You need to trust me. And I need you to show me that you're going to trust me. So give me 6 months. But if you want to back out at any time, I'm not charging you a cancellation fee. So I've never had anybody do less than a 6-month listing agreement. And in today's market in 2021, if you can't sell the house in 6 months, something really bad happened. So definitely, think about that. Line 154, be careful. Seller, this is agree to arbitration. This means if everything goes downhill, everyone agrees to arbitration. So the seller, the sales associate, and yes, your broker, Andrew Schock, has to sign this, okay? And how to get Andrew to sign this is another video. And just remember, you don't need his signature to put this on the MLS, but you do need his signature to upload this into SkySlope. Just remember that. Okay, additional terms. Seller directs broker not to put property on the MLS until 48 hours after photos are received and approved. Why do I put that? Because I have had times where I've scheduled my photographer to come out because he's busy and they didn't sign the listing agreement and I had to cancel the photographer. Thank God he's never actually gone out there to take photos and I just don't want to do that to him. So now I don't schedule the photo shoot until they sign the listing agreement. So the law is really that once you have an executed listing agreement, you have 48 hours to put it into the MLS. And then also you have 48 hours to put it into SkySlope with the XP. Well, you can't put it in the MLS without photos. So so far, we don't have an addendum that the seller needs to sign. I spoke to the board. They said as long as we put it here in the remarks and the additional terms, it's okay to say that we're not putting it on the MLS until after the photos are received. If there's extensive repairs or cleaning or pressure washing, you can also put that in. Do not wait, please. If the seller says to you, today is the middle of February, if they're like, we don't want to list it until March 1st, make them sign your agreement because I'll tell you what, they're going to change their mind in those 2 weeks and someone else is going to get the listing and it's not going to be you. So have them sign and then put in the additional terms why it's not on the market, why it's not in the MLS right away. Now, the second thing, let's say they have a problem with the 5 or 6% commission. What I always put in here is if listing agent, you have to put listing agent. You can't put broker. The broker's eXp Realty. That means if anybody in eXp Realty brings a buyer, then the commission goes down and that's not fair to you or the other agent. So if listing agent procures her own buyer, total commission will be 4%. Now, the odds of me selling my own listing, I'll be perfectly honest, I've only done that a few times. Your job as a listing agent is to get their property out there, to get it advertised, and to get it going. You need to bring a buyer. I don't care who sells it, okay? No pocket listing, no, I'm going to hog it all for myself. Get it sold and move on to the next one. So when you say, if listing agent procures her own buyer, total commission will be 4%. The seller gets excited and thinks that there's a chance that they're going to get a discount, which there is. It gets advertised on 95 websites. I put it on Facebook, Instagram, our YouTube channel. Everybody shares it. So we do the best we can to sell it ourselves. So this is a way to give them sort of, like I said, a discount. Now, this is also called a dual variable rate. Okay, don't forget that. That means that if you bring your own buyer, there's a lower commission. So you have to disclose that to other agents because their buyer can't compete. Think about it. If this listing was for 630, if I had my own buyer for 630 and the other agent had their own buyer for 630, the net to the seller is going to be less on mine because it's 4% versus 6% commission. If I have my own buyer and I either have a contract signed by that buyer or I know I'm going to go to the appointment to have them sign, somebody wants showing instructions, you say, I have to tell you there's a dual variable rate. I have my own buyer and it's a lower commission. If they ask you what that commission is, you tell them. And this is part of your ethics. And this will definitely keep you out of trouble because that is then that agent's responsibility to go to their buyer and say, look, you need to come up with the difference or, offer higher because we're not going to be able to compete with Shari's offer. So you get the seller's signature here. Here's their address. This is very important right here. I think today's the 18th, I said. So 2021, this means I sent it to the seller right here by email. This. Okay, so right here is the comprehensive rider to the residential. This is the HOA. I connected it. I actually have another video on this on how to fill this out. And here's the wiring fraud. And also you're going to need a seller's disclosure. So that is going to be another video as well. So I hope this helped. Good luck. And if you're watching this video, this means you have a listing. And in today's market, you definitely want that. See you on the next video.